Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa iti namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa iti namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Vrinda Jaya Jaya Gauranga Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Gauranga Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gauranga Jaya Jaya Gurudev Govinda Rama Madana Mohana Gopala 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 Govinda Rama Madana Mohana Govinda Rama Madana Mohana Gopala Govinda Rama Madana Mohana Gopala Govinda Rama Madana Mohana Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gauranga 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 Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa Haribol Namaste. Namaham Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa iti namini. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol Namaste. Good morning, everyone. Today is the continuation of our study program. And I'll read again the instruction of Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Instruction. How we can be guided to be able to take care of the plant, the seed of bhakti or love that has been planted in our heart by our friend, our eternal friend, our Gurudev, and how to take care of it, how to take care of that plant, how to maintain the garden so the plant will grow fast and bear fruits. And also, the opposite is how we should and how we should make effort not to be lazy, not to take advantage of the instruction, and cultivate what will kill the plant So this guidance helps us to maintain the plant so it will grow, so we can taste that fruit which our spiritual master, Jagad Guru Siddhaswarup, would want us to taste. This guidance will help us. In text 2, the translation is this: one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary, or collecting more funds than is required, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, practicing scriptural rules and regulation only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulation of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, and being greedy for mundane achievements. These 6 activities will hinder one's progress towards taking care of the seed or the plant of bhakti that has been planted in our heart. Talking unnecessarily. So, the perfect example is, it was during the time when Maharaj Pariksit, he knows he has 7 days to live in his body. For years, he has been administering the government. He's in control of the empire. But he knows that the goal of life, through the guidance of the saintly person, his advisors, who are all saintly, advise him to associate with someone who is a resident of the spiritual world, whose activities has been going on eternally. It is the connection with the loving service of devotional service that is coming down from the Supreme Person through this chain of spiritual master, this unbroken chain of spiritual masters who are all residents of the spiritual world. And the activities they are engaging in has been going on since time immemorial. And eternally, when I say since time immemorial in this universe, but it has been going on eternally because it is a world that is eternal. The world of loving service to the Supreme Person. So the spiritual master comes to guide us. So there are many factors that will hinder our coming towards the goal and achieving what they are advising us to achieve. Like, they gave an example of taking care of that plant. So you have to water it. If you have a garden, you have a plant, you have to water it, take care of it, arrange it that it will not be trampled, it will not be wrapped up by vines, so it will grow smoothly. So, activities in this world based upon the influence of the three modes of material nature, which is the influence of lust, the desire to find fulfillment in this material dimension, to follow the desires, to experience fulfillment through the senses. So, Maharaj Pariksit is giving us his life's example, how we can take care of that plant. And the first thing he did was to ask advice from the saintly person. And he was advised to look for someone who is the representative of God. And it's a common cultural knowledge and process during the Vedic times. So, he was advised by his advisors, who are all saintly, to listen to Sukadev Goswami, who is a disciple of Narada Muni, who is the son of Lord Brahma. That long, unbroken chain of spiritual masters who are all serving and loving the Supreme Person eternally. So he sat down for 7 days, and that association, because it's based upon hearing, what we hear will have a great impact upon our consciousness. A certain activity will lead to a certain consciousness. So material activities will lead to a certain consciousness. And the enemy we're facing is what Arjuna is telling Lord Krishna and asking Lord Krishna how one can become free from this force that drives a person to do something that by force, even though he does not want to do it. It is lust. What is lust? It is a force. It is the desire to find fulfillment. But in illusion, in ignorance of material contamination, based upon bodily identification, we try to fulfill those desires in the mind and try to satisfy the lust. But what happens is different. It's like there's a fire going on, the fire of lust. What we do, instead of trying to pour water upon it, we pour gasoline. We put a lot of material combustible objects, and it burns and burns and burns until it engulfs us. We get burned. So when a person, an individual, who is a different energy from matter, life, who is a marginal potency, who is transcendental, but not all-powerful, who is active by nature, us, we will always be active. But the question is, what activity should we do? Will it be an activity that will rekindle the fire of lust and burn us? Or activities that will nurture the plant that has been planted by our Gurudev, by the spiritual master in our heart, to nurture that plant so it will grow and we will taste what we're always anxious. We're anxious for love. But lust is the perversion of love. What is it? It is when a person tries to satisfy the desire in the mind to find fulfillment in the material dimension and try to lord it over, dominate material nature. And Lord Krishna tells us how it happens. Through sense perception, what we see through our senses, the environment we see, the sound we hear, everything that we see through our senses. We experience through our senses. Sense perception. Then when we are not understanding our true identity, not taking care of the plan of bhakti, and experiencing this happiness of doing what is pleasing to God, we will now be forced to find fulfillment and misdirect that longing for happiness by following the senses. So sense perception. We see an object around us in this world, living or non-living. And then we become attached. We try to enjoy, to taste it, to eat it, to experience this experience that the desire in the mind is promising us, this illusion of happiness, which is never satisfied. Then we become frustrated. And when we are frustrated, we become angry. And when we become angry, we lose our intelligence. So it's akin to a situation when there is a fire, what we do, instead of putting it off, we throw gasoline, combustible materials. So when a person is in illusion, he becomes servant of his senses. Because the mind, what is there in the mind, the desire, the person who tries to play Lord, who tries to fulfill those desires, he tries to fulfill it by trying to follow, not trying, being forced by the senses to follow, because there is a promise of an experience of enjoyment. But it's never fulfilled. It's never such, there's no satiation. It's like an abyss that even though how much a person tries to find fulfillment, he's never fulfilled because I'm not this body. I cannot be happy with matter, this body. I can experience temporary, flickering pleasure through the senses, but it will not satisfy my heart, what I'm longing. So when we associate with the devotee of God, especially association with what is being narrated in this eternal scripture, transcendental, non-different from God. When we hear the activities of Maharaj Pariksit, associating with Sukadev Goswami, being guided by Sukadev Goswami, Maharaj Pariksit's life has become perfect through this transcendental association with someone who is a resident of the spiritual world, who is not different from association with the Supreme Person, Govinda, the cause of all causes, whom Lord Brahma, the creator of this universe, worship eternally. And who our spiritual master is trying to introduce to us, to connect us, not just by accepting, but rather by passing on to us a process that will purify our heart, that will connect our love with what we should be situated. That is our eternal, transcendental situation as a child of God, a spirit soul, and eternally the loving servant of God. Eternally, absolutely, we are all servant-dominated. We are never in control. But because we desire to do our own will, we try to control. An example is this. Very simple example. We are always allured, attracted by the forms of this world. A young man, even though given this instruction, given the process to experience real connection with what is transcendental from the resident of the spiritual world who is not touched by this material nature, the three modes of material nature, material consideration, who is in a different world, a world of love. A person is given that opportunity. He comes in contact with someone who is a loving servant of God. He's given instruction. He's given guidance. Now the question is the choice we should make or he should make. So when a person is not making progress in spiritual life, it becomes a struggle to fight off material desires in the mind. It's like you're burning. So the activities he does every day out, day in, is trying to fend off the desire because he knows, oh, it's engulfing him. But because of material contamination, because of this disease we have of trying to dominate material nature, play Lord, imitate God, wanting to taste the taste of trying to enjoy and be Lord, false Lord. So when that person sees a form of this world, like a young man, he sees a beautiful woman. And what does he do? To get that, through sense perception, he becomes attached to that form, not seeing the person. His view of happiness is deflected upon that form. But the reason, in truth, in reality, is that when that person leaves the body, his meditation, his perception, what he perceived through his senses, when that person leaves the body, that person dies. What he's trying to look, what he's trying to experience is gone. But what happened? It was directed upon the temporary form made of matter. Atoms and molecules, the building blocks that's making up this body. So Arjuna was asking Lord Krishna, what impels a man to do things that he does not want to do, as if by force? And Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, it is only lust, my dear Arjuna. It comes from sense perception. One become attached, and that experience of lust, it is situated in our mind. So the process He's giving us is association with God through parampara, the disciplic succession, non-different from God. And it starts with oral reception, hearing. We see the representative of God not with our eyes. For so long, we have been looking for happiness, for fulfillment through our eyes, materialize. We should see God through the ears. We should see the representative of God through the ears, not through the eyes, this material eye. But when we become purified through association, through hearing, when we have seen the truth, when we have heard the truth and realized it, our life will not be focused upon this temporary moving world. Our attraction will not be focused upon trying to dominate and embrace what the mind wants us, the desire in the mind that will give us happiness. That lust, it will be now a desire. That lust will be transformed. Now, the desire in the mind will be transformed to do the desire of God. And what is that? It is loving service. It is connecting our heart, our whole being, into that world that is eternal. And that association is being given to us by Maharaj Pariksit. That association is being passed by the resident of Vrindavan and the residents of Vrindavan in that long line of disciplic succession, which is eternal, ongoing eternally. So the process itself is the process that will purify our heart. It is the beginning and the end. And it is about God. It is about the holy names of God. So Lord Chaitanya, the authority, the supreme authority, Lord Brahma, the creator, our Father, this universe, our Gurudev, they're all authorities who can guide us to take care of this plant of bhakti planted in our heart. And the guidance is associating with the pure, transcendental resident of the spiritual world, who is the bona fide spiritual master, who is eternally the loving servant of God. He teaches us the laws of love. And that lust that has engulfed us, situated in the mind, because lust, connected with it, is anger and greed, and it is situated in the mind. So we must purify the mind. So a certain activity leads to a certain consciousness. For so long, we have been here, muddling in this muck, swimming. Now, we must purify ourselves from this mud. Just like my spiritual master, Jagad Guru Siddhaswarup, gave the example of a turtle who had been living in the Sahara Desert during rainy season. Now it's summer, and everything there, the water is gone, and he's engulfed by the mud. He cannot move, helpless. So the spiritual master sees this poor turtle. This turtle cannot move, cannot see, covered by mud, and that mud has become petrified because of the heat of the sun. So the turtle cannot move. It's like a cement. He cannot move. And all the predators are there. The hyenas, the crocodile, looking at him, looking at the turtle, to devour him.
So when we come in contact with the representative of God, we are so covered. We cannot move, and He helps us. Take off all the mud. He gives us a process to purify our heart. He gives us God, which will cleanse that contamination that has engulfed us, so we can become free. So He arranges it to put us in a situation of associating an environment that is transcendental, that gives life, that is life. And the love that has been misdirected upon this temporary world, which is turned into lust, can now be purified and transformed into love. So the devotee, the person who's making progress, he sees with the eye of compassion. His heart is satiated and now anchored upon the source of real happiness. And he comes to the point, there's nothing more to be gained. So he becomes now the director of his mind. He can now control the urge of the mind and direct it to please God, to use what has encumbered him to please God. So now, association. Through association, if we associate with worldly-minded people, we will hear about activities that will engulf us, that will rekindle this lust, this fire. That's why you look around. They have beauty contests. The most beautiful woman in this world, they call it Miss. In the Philippines, it's Miss Philippines. But put it on a higher level, Miss International. And then put it on a higher level, Miss Universe. So everybody is listening and associating with worldly-minded people. But previous years, decades ago, we were blessed and given association by a holy man who is the dearmost friend, our Gurudev. He is guiding us, assisting our Gurudev, teaching us the science of identity, who cares so much for our Gurudev. So he's actually a living example who is in this world, who followed the instruction of Maharaj Pariksit. Years back, this loving servant of our Gurudev, who is his friend, eternal friend, taught us the reality of this world. He gave a blatant, he's very direct. He tells us, look at the breast. There's no happiness there. It's dripping with blood. But when we are in illusion, we cannot see that. So he opens our eyes. And it comes with associating with someone who is transcendental, who is with God, who is light, who is real happiness, real fulfillment. And he guides us to see the truth. Because if you stand there, he tells us, and look at all these individuals in this human form as what we are being conditioned, what is beautiful, the lust is rekindled. We identify with the body, thinking, wow, I can find happiness through this. But he gives us an example, very direct. If you can take off that zipper, open up the body, there's a zipper at the back, that when you pull the zipper down, you can take off the skin of this so-called beautiful Miss Universe, vying around for material achievement. I'm the most beautiful person, and trying to have that fame. And you begin to see, wow, what's inside? So His Divine Grace, si Bhaktivedanta Swami, It's telling us we're so much engrossed thinking we're the body, but the body is made out of bile, mucus, urine, and waste matter. So when this with this saintly person instructed us, taught us, he showed us the reality, the truth to protect us, and the wisdom so we can take care of this plant so it will grow, the seed of bhakti, devotional service. So if we want to become free from this lust which drives everyone into doing something that will hurt them spiritually, separate them from what we should be really tasting, that love and devotion that is eternally with us and now directed upon this temporary world, we should attain what they're telling us. When we have, there's nothing more to achieve. That the holy names is the beginning, the teachings and association of God through the holy names, through the spiritual master, who is a resident of the spiritual world, is the beginning and the end itself. We now enter that world, that eternal family of devotees, loving servant of God. It will not be anymore a struggle of trying to fend off the desire, but they are giving us a guidance that this burning fire of lust can simmer down, can become smaller and smaller and smaller until it's transformed into love, which is inseparable from us, which in reality transcendental, and direct that love upon doing what is pleasing to God. So the Supreme Person, Lord Krishna's desire for us is to be happy. He's telling us, just surrender unto me and I'll protect you. Love me. Because absolutely, if we will not give our love and taste that sweetness, as what is being exemplified by Lord Chaitanya, our Gurudev, by this saintly person, that love will be directed upon this world and it will give us pain. It will give us this load to experience the burning fire of lust and anger, this envy, this sadness, this loneliness, this bitterness. It's like when the living entity, they're always telling us, you know, the perfect is an example of a fish out of water gasping. No matter what you do, he will be gasping. He must return back to the ocean, to where he belongs, his natural habitat. And that natural habitat is the word of love, because that love is eternally connected with the spirit soul, us. By nature, we are active. But we can make a choice. We have this decision making, either to do what is pleasing to someone we love, to sacrifice, to be very brave, to hold the line, to do what is pleasing, to taste that experience of doing the will of God. And it comes when we chant the holy names of God. The holy names of God will be the beginning that this burning lust will get smaller, or this boiling water will simmer down and becomes cold, and the warmth of love will be our shelter when that plant of bhakti planted in our heart grows smoothly and we taste that sweetness of that fruit. And the proof is this: we become in knowledge of reality, and we can now see what will hurt us, what will separate us from this word of love, and what will make the heart of someone we love. We don't want that heart, that person, to be displeased. That our life is simply centered around doing what is pleasing to that person. That's why when one comes in contact with that someone who is a lover, a true devotee, who is a resident of the spiritual world, we learn the science of love. We don't want now to do anything that will be displeasing to Him. We want to become pleasing to Him. That's the beginning, to do what is pleasing to God. To enter that world of devotional, loving service. That offering that comes from our heart to do His will, to embrace Him. And that embrace comes with embracing our spiritual master's advice and teaching, that love that is giving us, to become free from this lust that has separated us from the sweetness of devotional service. So when one comes in contact with the spiritual master and make progress to taking care of this plant, my spiritual master gives an example, because as an individual, all the experience that we have experienced in these many lifetimes is registered in the mind. It's like a database. But we will be like the fan that is now disconnected with this material world, disconnected from this electricity that will kill us spiritually. Although the fan is moving, the living entity who has experienced all those experiences in his mind, he now sees. It's not anymore a struggle, illusion. You run from illusion. No. Because your heart, our heart, is now directed, anchored upon that shelter of the unconditional love of God, who loves us unconditionally, who will pick us up. Because now our faith has become so strong that when through associating with this transcendental resident of the spiritual world, whose world is simply loving service to the spiritual master, we now taste what is real, what is really sweet. Our attraction to this world becomes lesser and lesser. That when the electric fan, the fan is still moving, because while we are here, we see all this experience. But we will become what the spiritual master is giving an example. That where when under the lotus feet of the spiritual master will be like the lotus, it not touched by the mud. When we put our life in His hands, then we are sheltered. He tells us, surrender unto me, love me, I'll protect you. And that faith grows when we follow the instruction of the spiritual master, especially the teachings of Rupa Goswami, that we should associate not with worldly-minded people whose sound that comes from their heart, from their mouth, is about this world of lust, this temporary moving world. It will now be a word of life, the word of love. So the holy names, when we chant that plant of bhakti planted in our heart, the holy names become sweet and sweeter and sweeter. So we now have higher taste. We cling to that. My instructing spiritual master was telling me years back, when you must become like the dog, that when given a bone, he clings to it and bites it, no matter what. Nobody can fool it because he bites it. Now I can have this recall. It's like you go to a billionaire and then he tells you, you ask, go to him and, can you give me a penny, a centavo? When he's giving he will give us so much. But we just want that penny. We must experience this process and follow it and apply it, because Sukadev Goswami, the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of God, the transcendental word of love, is now associating with Maharaj Pariksit and listening from the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who is the spiritual master of our dear friend. We are given that opportunity to have this sweet transcendental association that will satisfy our heart. Haribol, Namaste. Thank you very much. Let's chant. Namam Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa iti namine. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Siddhaswarupanada, Paramahamsa iti namine. Namo Siddhaswarupanada, Paramahamsa namine, Gaura Karuna Swarupaya, Radha Krishna Prastayate. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga. Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana. Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana. Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana. Gopala Govinda Rama, Madana Mohana.
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Bhagavan, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Bhagavan. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya
Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Ananda Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Ananda Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Jaya Jaya Siddhaswarupanada Paramahamsa. Haribol. Jai Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev. Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasade. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaurabhakta Brigam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Haribol Namaste. Thank you very much for taking part in this program. Haribol.